Hi, I'm Matt from HockeyReviews.ca, and this is the Warrior Ritual G7. This is just the 7, not the 0.1. This one was the 0.1 blocker comparison review to the 6.1 as well as to the 5. So this one has the removable palm in it and is a different board shape and size. You can see the difference between these two. This one was that much more angled board. This one's straighter. This one is more or less the descendant to what this one was. Obviously, this one had a 6 and a 6.1. I went with the 6.1 route to compare these two. This, I went back to the no point, so it's just a 7, to compare basically these two, as well as to see the big changes between this one and this one. There were a lot of changes between the 5 and the 6, and a lot of really good changes. This blocker I don't think was that good. This one was very good, and then this one kind of built off of this one, but with that option of the removable palm. So this video will be a comparison of all the features on this compared to kind of these, and comparing these two lines as well. And then we'll do a separate video comparing the removable palms on this and this one and kind of how it works. I'll talk about some of the comparables here, but we'll take the palm out of these in a different video. That way it won't be too long because that takes a while and it's a process, but there is some differences between the removability of these. So we'll talk about that in a separate video. First of all, huge thanks to the person who helped me grab this set and do this video on. They're probably watching this and they know who they are, so it's greatly appreciated on my end. Without your help, I probably couldn't do these videos for these, so it is appreciated. Now, I also have the comparison review already out for the pads. The catch and glove will also come out very soon as well. I also have my first skate video out for this whole set, so check that one out, which is already on YouTube, and they'll be linked in the description as well. So we'll start with the graphics and aesthetics really quick just because they're here. This is a really good example of kind of just the evolution of Warrior graphics. You can kind of see every one has slightly got better. In my opinion, this one was way too just straight up and down with blocks. This one was a little bit more. You can see you have some of that intersect. This one, a lot more of that intersect and kind of new design. It's still a thing where I'm going to call this out all the time. I still think Warrior needs to cut their bottom pieces down a bit more too and do a little bit more side to side breaking up. Design really made it easy to construct based on just all the lines are pretty well straight lines. This was the same thing. This one, still straight lines, but at least you have overlap on things and you can do a lot more with this graphic than you could have on the other graphics. So I'm a huge fan of what they did here, but like the pads, and it's really evident in the pads, this bottom section could really use like a breakup point somewhere to add to it. So you can really like make this bottom section, especially with the pads, like I said, where it's a lot of white. This right here would just be nice to have something else, but the graphics on these are definitely getting better. So props to Warrior for that. And it is interesting to see the evolution of their kind of embossing on it. You can see the little dots on here, which was kind of interesting and a unique take. The next one had these little rectangular kind of press in there, like, and then this one is to a square, and you can really see that one on there and there. So kind of interesting that Warrior does that. Just a little kind of neat little touch I think they do on the Gen Pro that isn't necessary, but just adds a little bit of interesting flair to it. I've had people ask me over and over again of what socks I always recommend, and I've been using Cutshield for a while now. I have multiple stuff from them. So Cutshield is a company out of Canada that makes cut resistant socks, and these are their Pro Air 6, which means it's an anti-level 6 for cut resistance on here. Full review of it up there so you can check it out. But I now have a coupon code with Cutshield, so if you want to support the channel, you can check out the link in the description to Cutshield, buy some socks, which I think are honestly one of the better socks on the market. I absolutely love them. They're pretty thin and they are cut resistant and they're not too hot either. Use my coupon code, you get 25% off and it helps support the channel. Again, Warrior has 2 different model lines on here. And because this will be super confusing right now when you look at this, there is a Pro Plus, which was this one, which was the custom, and now there's the RTL. I'm assuming RTL stands for Ritual, but the RTL is now the top line and the Pro is now the like retail senior line. Now I understand people hate this, and I don't like when companies kind of break the continuity of their line and naming. It becomes confusing for customers and for everyone, but I understand why Warrior did that. And I don't know if Warrior is directly following competitors, but it happens a lot in the industry, especially with player sticks. Bauer used to have Pro as their top line, right? So they had 2S Pro, 2X Pro, and then all of a sudden they realized other companies started using Pro. This was for the player side of things too, especially. So then instead of doing Pro for the top line, they bumped it down one. So their top sticks became like ultrasonic, and then the stick below became 3S Pro. Same with the goalie gear. So that is basically what happened. They went ultrasonic and had a unique name for that top line, and then kind of put the Pro one step down. And you can see other companies doing the Pro thing. I feel like Warrior kind of did that with this. The Pro kind of makes sense being the top line, but then when it becomes a price point of a competitor who, let's be real, Bauer is massive. So if people see a Pro on this and then they compare, oh, well, that must be equivalent to the Bauer Pro, which is not as good, but this one costs more. Unfortunately, that's just how people sometimes think, and it's confusing for customers and stuff. So I understand RTL is now the top line, which makes sense, and now it's differentiating it. And then their Pro is now the same Pro price point as what Bauer is. So it makes sense in that sense. And I get it. It's annoying for continuity, but in the scheme of things, it's probably better for the consumer so they don't get confused. It probably helps Warrior so people don't misinterpret what level their gear is based on the competition. So speaking of this numbering though, Warrior did an awesome thing where they killed the GT line, and that would probably be controversial to hear from people, but really they're so close together with options, especially with custom. But with doing the 0.1, they allowed 2 glove options and 2 blocker options with the pad line without having to come out with a new set of gear every year. So now it's that 2-year cycle like everyone else does for the specific line. And honestly, this is, I think, a great change. 6.1 is a very different blocker than the 7. The 7 keeps that removable liner and palm, as you can see here, where this one was sewn in. Still has some adjustability things on it, but the palm and liner itself was sewn in. The other big difference on this, and you can see it from here, is that board shape. So you can see how much more aggressive the top of that board is compared to this one, which is a lot flatter. You can also see the board is a bit skinnier as well. So I think this is a better take on it, especially up here where this one is a lot fatter. This one is skinnier. These two next to each other, you can see that board is slimming out a bit here. So not quite as thick as the old G5s were, as you can see, slimming it down a little bit, but overall the shape and everything is a lot closer to that just normal 5. Now for preferences for this blocker board shape, it's going to be totally personal preference, just to be totally honest. I like this shape more. I find that top little piece right there is easier to handle rebounds and to control rebounds of where you want them to go. It also stops pucks from kind of hitting it and kind of sliding over you, which can sometimes happen in desperation plays when you can't get your blocker straight out and instead it's tilted a little bit. This one I haven't used enough to see if that's a negative yet for it. I have used it a bit and I just do like this shape more, and that's just a personal preference thing. If I don't do content and make like comparison reviews and reviews of gear, I would have bought a 7.1, but I thought this was more important for me to do just a normal 7 to show the removable palm and the changes on it and compare it to the old 6. Going on to the sidewall of these, which you can kind of see here, they're very similar to each other, and when we look kind of here, same thing, very, very similar to each other. Warrior has made huge strides on their honestly gear in general, but the sidewall on here for the blocker as well, these are way better than what they used to be. So just as a comparison, when we look at this sidewall, you can see the stiffness of it. It's decently stiff. It's not the stiffest blocker on the market, but it's pretty good all the way through, and that's pretty solid. And you can see just the overall size of it and how it kind of sits. It's pretty flat on there, and it's pretty good overall. And they really did a good job of hiding kind of the foams in there, which was visible in the past. And it is a pretty dense foam. Like you can move it and flex it a bit, but it is pretty solid overall. And there might even be some plastics or they're composite in here, because when you go like this, it's really solid. And that is very similar to what this is. So you can see you have a little bit more movement, but basically the same. And I'm pretty sure this is just because the removable palms are slightly different construction on it, but that is still a pretty solid sidewall. And again, same thing up here, pretty solid all around. You can see the foams a little bit on here, which was a little bit more cleaned up on the previous one, but it's not a big deal. And again, very solid sidewall piece overall. Doesn't feel like there's much of a change between these two, and if there is, like I haven't felt it yet or really noticed it. It does look, maybe it might be a little bit skinnier and thinner than what this one was, but it also might just be how that stitching was done, just slightly different as well. So not a huge difference between these two, which is fine because it was good and solid. And here's the big improvement piece. When we look at the G5 compared to what this one was, you can see how the G5 pushes out, which some people might prefer, I guess, because it would kind of cover gaps maybe a little bit more. But then when you go like this, you can see, and you can fold this blocker sidewall and everything basically in pieces, because the foams in here were pretty weak, and it really had that issue with that foam sticking out, and people really commented on this for quality and things. Really doesn't do anything, but doesn't look great. But this sidewall was honestly bad compared to what the new ones are, and you can hear on that versus this where it doesn't even flex. So huge improvements on these ones, and this 7 versus the 5 on here, massive improvements on this. I'm not going to take this piece apart. We'll do that when I talk about the removable palms in that other video, but you can just see how the construction of these thumbs and stuff are through here. But you can see how all this works out really well, and the thumb and everything is very similar to itself, if not identical, and it works well with them. Again, huge improvements over what this was in the past. Just the whole like makeup of this, you can see how this was like one piece all the way here, but really didn't do a whole lot of great things. This one's a lot more solid, more protective, and just overall much better design. And that carries on into the 7, so not a whole lot of changes through there like that. The nylon seems to have been improved on this. I don't know if this was just an early batch or something, because I'll talk about that in a second, but this nylon is a lot more feeling like durable and sturdy. It feels more closer to the pro stock gloves than what this one does. So nice improvements on there. And when we look at the inner parts right here, you can see some differences. Obviously removable liner, I'm gonna skip that for now, but you can see a slightly different material on here. You have this different liner on here, and I'm not gonna say it's better or worse. The 6 feels softer to the touch, so I'm not sure what the route they went there, but it's also a lot more padded. So this piece right here has a lot thicker foam in it right here than what this one does. This one is a lot thinner and doesn't really feel like it's made for protection, where this one does feel like it was added to add a bit of protection into it. And then the under pieces as well just feel like they are actually the exact same under here. So this kind of air mesh is a slightly different gray looking, but everything under this top piece definitely feels the exact same. Outer piece right here does feel very similar, but if you look at it right now, you can see how this one kind of seems like it flares out a bit more. Now, I haven't adjusted this much. I left it kind of where it was just to see how it played. And I noticed right away this was getting in the way of my Warrior X4 chest. So this has to be adjusted a little bit, but you can see, I think, the idea that this is a little bit more open than what this one is. Now, like, it's more folded over, but it still kind of gets in the way a bit. Maybe it's this inner piece, or maybe that's why they thin this piece out so it doesn't get in the way of the cuff as much, but it did a little bit there. But that's easily changeable because you do this and you can move it down here, and then you get less interference because it pulls it down a bit more, which might not be the most natural place for it. But I'm going to do that right there just so it does pull down a little bit more instead of having it go up here. So it does open that cuff a bit more than what it was. Backhand padding is all very similar to each other. This one did feel like it had a bit more of like a shape to it, but that might just because it's worn in more to my hand. This is obviously removable, but materials on here feel the exact same. It's that very traditional, very soft, originally Warrior gray Nash through here. Very comfortable to the touch now. This one's obviously a lot more worn and a lot more kind of scratchy, but this one feels absolutely fantastic. Now, opening these up so you get a bit better view of the palm, you can see this inner strap right here for tightening and Velcro. Pretty standard piece on here, and it's supposed to overlap with this so you don't feel it tighten. Does hinder a bit like that, but that's obviously the point because it's trying to tighten your actual board. But this is kind of the piece where I feel like the other one was done better because it's not adjustable. This one you have to adjust, and it can be on both sides. So you have to adjust it because the palm is removable up and down, so you have to kind of line it up with what's in there. So this one still had the 3 adjustable points, 1, 2, and the one it's in right now for it, but it just always felt like it held better and it kind of sat better where it is. It just feels more natural, and it always gets underneath this piece. Where so far I have found this one already, it kind of has gone below this little flap right here. So this piece. So when I had this on previously, I noticed it kind of below that. It's not a huge thing, but it's just my preference of having that sewn in blocker palm where stuff like this kind of just works a little bit better. Yes, this is adjustable, so I can change this in 3 spots, like I mentioned, to wherever I want it. So maybe I'll move that one piece up so it kind of comes on an angle and it will wrap a bit more. Other great thing about this, a Warrior does well, other companies can kind of watch. Soft Velcro here, so if you don't do it very tight like this, it will not get caught on things, versus other companies that leave the sticky Velcro right here, so it can get caught, and then the sticky Velcro is right here. So excellent piece right there. I love that attention to detail from Warrior, and I'm a huge fan of that design. Looking at the palm, it is very similar. We do have slightly different gray materials in here, so I'm not sure why that changed, but the air knit just feels like it's slightly different and gray, but everything else in the palm feels absolutely the same, and same with the fingers. Through everything here, you have the padding on the top. Still, you have air through the fingertips and everything. Very standard. You have a little bit padding on the outside here, like their player gloves, which is a nice little touch in case you get slash on the side. And then you have but they did still remove that index finger piece. So there used to be padding right here, which you can see right here on the old G5. So they removed that since they added this fingertip piece right here though. So slightly sad that went away, but this is a lot better piece than what the other one was. So overall, a good improvement. We do have an adjustable thumb piece right here, same as what is on this one and same as what is on the other one. So this, you can unvelcro, pull your thumb out a bit so you get a more loose thumb piece so it's not as tight, or you can really tighten it in there to get basically as much protection as possible so it's really tight in there. I'm fine with this. You have to adjust this to where your thumb length will be. If you have a longer thumb, you're going to want that to come out more so your thumb can kind of go through there. If it's shorter, you might want that tighter, so it kind of shortens the whole length of the thumb. Totally personal preference. Figure out what you want to do with that. Further, gray Nash, it's the same thing as what is on all the other ones, and I'm going to say this again and again. This is super comfortable, and I feel like this is still one of the spots that Warrior could improve on. This is very comfortable right now, brand new. It feels super soft. It's going to feel great off the shelf. People are going to feel, I'm like, oh, it's so soft and so comfortable. But what I've noticed on these is it gets so slimy, and then this is the worn out one. It's not that worn. It's decent shape overall. But when I played back-to-back games, it was so slimy and the grip just massively deteriorated on it. When I use it now, it's grippy enough. It's okay. It's not super grippy like the Sure Grips or anything like that, but it's okay. But when I play 2 games, it's just not grippy enough. And that's same with the catching glove. This material is soft to the touch. It feels okay. Durability looks like it's okay. But once it gets wet and once it gets sweat in, I have a hard time using this glove for 2 games in a row. And that's kind of disappointing. I do wish they went to a different material on this. Maybe put some Sure Grip on here, or maybe just go with more of their player material palms, because this does feel slightly different than what their player material palms are, but it's just, it gets too wet and too slippery. So not a huge fan of this palm. Comfort wise, it is amazing and very nice. On the side, you can see that sewn in piece right here, which the blocker is pointing to, that gray piece right there, versus the adjustable ones right here. And I'm not going to go through that. We'll talk about that later on. But really quick thing for this adjustable piece, there's only 2 spots for it now. So you can see you have like 1, 2, where on the old G5, you actually had 3. So you had a high, a mid, a low. And you see the other 3 there. So you had 3 on this. You only have 2 on this, which is an interesting change. I don't know why they did that. I'm going to have to ask Warrior and see what was the reason for it. Maybe they just found people use only 2 of them. You don't really need 3. I think the adjustments are micro enough that 2 is totally fine, but interesting that they did remove that. Another part on this that is pretty nice is these adjustable finger pieces on the right here, where you can loosen it or tighten it, and it depends on how much the clamshell comes down and covers your fingers. I always leave these as tight as possible. You can see it right here as well. Now, continuing on this, we have this index finger piece right here. This is what I'm talking about for the worn out and better nylon. So this was mine, and as you can see, it ripped through the stitching, and this is the impacts on here as well, which also got a chunk like kind of split in half. I'm assuming this is because it was cold, and an impact probably caused it to break. But anyways, this right here is that nylon where it ripped apart. This is a softer feeling nylon. It is updated with a more durable nylon. I was told on this, when I talked to them about this happened after like maybe 4 months of use, this started happening. I talked to them about it, and they said I had one of the early versions and they changed the nylons on it. This wasn't supposed to be that nylon, and they updated it to this one, and this one is more durable. So we'll see how that lasts. This is that impacts, and this is on their helmets and a bunch of things. It's kind of like that smartphone, which every company kind of had at one point, Poron D30. It feels great to the touch, and I might as well just show it right here because you can see it. It's a kind of that memory foam where you can squeeze it, it squishes, but then it comes out. It's a very good protective foam, but you could see it split. So I'm curious to see if the G7 will split like this, and if this was kind of a problem with just all of this. I really hope it stays. I like this idea. I like this material. It's great index finger protection. So I really hope that continues and actually works and stays as you want it to. Now this piece right here is also removable. So it has this little piece of Velcro right here where you can adjust it. But if you unvelcro that, you can just take it out from here. So you can pull it through there, and then you undo this piece, pull it through, and then this part is totally removable. So it just sits kind of on top with that Velcro part right there, which I love. If you don't like this, if you feel like it gets in the way, you can take it out. I love it. It's extra padding. It's great padding. So keeping it there, I'm totally fine for, especially the side piece, but you can remove it if you want to. And I love that modularity on it. And I've been kind of talking about how I think Warrior could do that on this stuff. And it's great to see it on here. They did it on that one, obviously, but it's great to see it on here as well. Core Tech, which are Coreshorts, and people have heard of these before. They were labeled under Under Armour before. Now Bauer sells hockey specific one, but Core themselves sell their own line of pants and supportive clothing and apparel. Basically, this stuff helps you with growing strains, growing pulls, and helps keep your hips tight and everything like that. And speaking of injuries, I kind of pulled a growing playing in the playoffs a few months ago and have had to keep using these Core Tech shorts to make sure my growing doesn't get worse. When I don't wear them, I can feel it, and it hurts kind of to walk the next day. With these, keeps everything nice and tight and keeps everything from stretching out too far and getting injured. So these have been a huge savior for me. Check out the link in the description to their website and use my coupon code that's in there to get a discount, and I'll put it on the screen here. It helps support myself and the channel so I can make content and doing real reviews, but also you get a solid product that I use all the time. Now, since we are talking about fingertip protection and we're going to move straight on to index finger protection as well, this is a piece I already took out. I had a ton of problems with it. So the way this works is there's two pieces of Velcro inside here, one right here that you undo on the side, you stick it in there, and one back there. So I'll show how to take this off in the other video as well, because it's the whole Velcro and the palm stuff. But I had to take this off right away because when you put this on and you kind of stick it in here, and maybe I can adjust this a bit to make it better, but in its stock setting, when I tried to play with this, it just got in the way and couldn't do anything. It basically sat like that, and you can see how little of a gap there is for a stick. And when you end up trying to grab a stick, it sits there and it just pushed my blocker at an awkward angle and it wouldn't slide at all. You can see it getting stuck on everything and it's not going anywhere. I've had great experiences with the Warrior blockers of not getting stuck on sticks, and this just kind of stopped that totally and wouldn't work at all. And since we're here at this position talking about index finger protection, you can see, and this is like a huge improvement over what was done in the past. It had kind of a tooth on here, as you can see how it kind of rounds down. This one is a lot straighter. It's still slightly a bit of a tooth, but a lot straighter, but they beefed everything out. So you do have that piece right here. So if you wear this, puck is never getting into your fingers there at all. But again, that's very restrictive and doesn't work for me at all. So I have to take it out. So when we take it out, you can see that is what the index finger protection is, and it's pretty good. You have that piece getting in the way, which isn't going to cause a problem, but you can see how it gets in the way a little bit on the stick, and this isn't a super grippy stick. But that does a really good job of that. Now, if you hold your blocker like this, you're going to have a bit more issue. But doing this, it is fantastic. And you can see how little that puck would get in the way there. And the other part that's really good about this too is with this inner shell, you have that outer piece and then this shell kind of doing the protective piece on the puck. So if it hits a puck here, hits here, and then this impacts as well. So a lot of index finger protection on there, very solid overall. When we look at this, you can see how little exposed that index finger piece is because of this impact. And the shell itself doesn't do a great job. It is slightly sloped, but the impacts itself really covers that. If you remove that impact, your finger's pretty exposed there, but you put it in there and it's going to get covered. That's for sticks jamming, stuff like that. So this does a pretty good job for that. Down here, we have a lot better than what we used to, and I called this out on the G5, where this basically finger piece, because it didn't have any bindings on it, it was just too thick and got in the way. And then also you had no fingertip protection. So even when this comes down, your fingertips were always exposed because it didn't have that flap. They totally revamped this. They made it a lot more angled, as you can see, and the other one just, it was angled but didn't really ever come down. This one totally is thinner with that exposed foam on the back and comes down and really does cover the fingertips a lot better. Now, this still could be a lot better, and this is where I'm talking about the modularity of this being nice. I still want Warrior to add something here too, because while this is good and this will kind of cover a lot of sticks, you still have this part exposed, and in my experiences, if something's exposed, it's going to get hit. And this does a good job, but it could be better. So either this could be longer coming down here and even attach kind of right here to pull this down a bit more, or add an impacts piece, or just add a removable piece kind of like this, but in this material on here that you can take off if you want, because I would like that fingertip protection to come down. You see the really good ones on Bauer have a flap right here that covers that all the way. So even when you're looking at this, your fingertips are completely covered and it doesn't really affect picking up sticks or anything like that very much. So this is still a decent design and a pretty good design, but it could be a bit better. So I hope that changes in the future. But this design is a huge improvement over the issues that were on the G5 with that paddle down where it got in the way. Where this one, it doesn't really get in the way if you go straight down. If you lean, it does, but that's with every single blocker. But when you go straight down, that is perfectly good and works and does its job. And finally, for this blocker board as well, the stiffness on it is very stiff. So you can see it's not flexing anywhere or kind of folding over a little bit on the edge, but the whole board itself is pretty solid and stiff. And this one was the smaller board shape, but very stiff as well. And the old one was like a little bit softer and not quite as good. The new one is a lot better, and this is honestly a pretty solid design overall. For rebounds and stuff, I can't talk about, haven't used it enough, so that will come with the full review and not just this comparison review. Hopefully this shows you how much better the G7 line is compared to the G5, because that G5 had a lot of issues with the finger pieces. The sidewall was really bad, as you could see. The G6 improved on basically all of that, to be honest, and this was the big improvement line. But because I had the 6.1, I couldn't really show that off as much. Now the 7, definitely can see the differences there, and the differences between these two isn't massive, just some small changes and adjustments on things, but that's totally fine because this was a good basis of the glove. The G6 was a very good upgrade and a solid blocker. Warrior really did huge improvements on this. The G7 just kind of changes slightly on that to make them slightly better and a little bit different. Big fan of them and really excited to use this a lot more to do a full review on, and that will be coming once I get some ice time with it and skates with it and some testing with it. So one final thing on here, and this is a bit about the adjustable palms. The hand positioning on these is obviously this one is stuck in place and this one is adjustable. So you do have that 2 adjustable spots on this. This one you do not. This one is a pretty neutral hand position overall. It almost looks like that 2-piece Bauer blocker, but really your fingertips don't pass the board here, where if you do have that lower hand position, they definitely do. It isn't one of the things where your hand's way up here and you have a lot of board below. It is pretty neutral overall, and you can see the fingertips kind of just end up going right at the end and not coming past. So neutral in general. And for this, obviously this one is at this position, so the hand is actually lower on the board. If you moved it up, it would be less neutral, but this is the same as what that one is basically for neutrality. Right now at the lowest hand, fingers are basically right at the end of the board, but nothing crazy. Now I'm going to adjust this and move it higher, so my hand will be higher up here just to see how it plays in the balances, and that will have more blocker board lower on the pad. So we'll see how that one is. I'll talk about it in the review, but for the time and just for the bottom position, it's pretty neutral overall. Not crazy low, not crazy high, just in the middle as you'd kind of expect. So that's about it for this comparison review between these 3 series of blockers. Hopefully it was helpful. If it was helpful, please let Warrior know on social media. These videos are helpful, so hopefully I can keep doing these in the future and making more content on Warrior gear. I think they made a ton of huge changes ever since, like, the 4 to the 5 was a big jump, and the 5 to the 6 was a massive jump, and I was extremely happy with this whole line. It was really good. And then the 6 to the 7 is incremental on the gloves, but the pads are a big jump again as well. So really excited to see what Warrior's doing. I really think they have some awesome gear here, and I'm happy to use them. I'm going to be using this blocker, well, this whole set, a lot coming forward. And make sure you check out all the other videos on the G7 line. There's going to be a ton of them. We're going to be comparing stuff. We're going to do the how to move the palm and everything on this and compare it really to the 5 and how that changed for the palm moving. And we're going to have full reviews coming down the line in the future as well. Thank you very much for watching this video. Remember, subscribe to me on YouTube, follow me on Instagram and TikTok. Links are in the description. If you want to support the channel and you're buying hockey equipment anyways, check out the links in the description if you're in Canada to Hockey Supremacy, if you're in the US to Pure Hockey. Clicking those links, making a purchase gives me a kickback, helps support the channel. Or if you don't want to buy any hockey gear and you want to support the channel, check out the links in the description to buy me a coffee. Everything through any of those links always comes back into the channel, so I can keep making more content and doing more reviews. Thank you very much for watching, and take it easy.
You're watching HockeyReviews.ca.